assume with this gigantic turnout, I assume everybody's here to talk about the tax bill and the new budget. Being that usually it's about 35 of you. So we want to start off tonight, Matt, we're going to start with these posters here and explain a little bit about the history behind why we're here to set the record straight about what happened with the tax bill.
But before we do that, you should know that thanks to Mr. Gordon over yonder, you're on the internet. So if you're in some kind of a discussion with your parole officer or your ex-wife, this would be a good time to move to the back and put a hat over your face. I think this is good because it helps us to answer some of the criticism we get about how come you have the meetings late at night and we can't go. So here we are. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
And that Michael.
Yeah. Well, we're going to stand here.
So I'll get started. Since the tax bills went out, we had a big attendance at the selection meeting immediately, which was not a surprise really. And we've been explaining since what exactly it was that happened that took us all by too much surprise. So these three posters over here, I just want to run through this. I have 2012, which is 2 years ago, and then 2013, which had the tax increase in it. The total voted warrant articles, that's the whole thing, the general operating budget, the truck, the, whatever else gets voted separately. In 2012, 2,052,500. In 2013, the total warrant that was passed was $2,127,348 for an increase of 3.6%, which is $74,848. It doesn't show up there. Operating budget only, this longer poster, in 2012 was $1,509,663. And in 2013, $1,634,348 for an increase of 8.2%, which is $124,685. And just as a tangential thing, I have 2014, the budget before us tonight, which we may do anything at all to, but as it landed tonight after talking with the department heads and so forth and so on, is $1,629,128, which is a decrease from last year of 0.3% or $5,220. This is where it shows up, this third poster. In 2012, the total to be raised by new taxation, $1,670,566. We bought a truck that year, completely out of capital reserve. It did not raise new taxation to pay $110,000 for that truck that year. Last year, the total to be raised by taxation, $2,127,348, an increase of 27.3%, or $456,782. All the warrant articles that were passed last year were paid for with new taxation. We took no money out of surplus. There wasn't any to take. We took no money out of capital reserve because we didn't buy a big piece of equipment or a truck. So that's the increase right there. And in this town, $178,000 in spending equals about $1 on the tax rate. So that's how we got here. We didn't spend much more money. The budget was up 8.2%, which is not inconsiderable. But because we didn't take money out of money that we had already raised, and raised it all at once, that's the increase. So because we've had such interest, which we appreciate, truly we do, the more people who are involved in this process, the better off we will all be in making the decision that suits as many of us as possible. So previously I've always talked about the pieces of the Alstead tax bill in percentages, school, county, and town. I've made a change because we got a letter from our police chief that was beautifully written and talked about dollars at his house instead of percentages. So I have changed the presentation here to dollars, using as an example a $200,000 assessment on a house. The tax bill for 2013, $5,360. Then this chart breaks this out. $3,052 of this $5,360 goes directly to the school, where $1,086 of it is spent at the high school, and $1,966 is spent here in town, K-8. The county got $648 of this $5,360. That is the sheriff's department, county jail, and the county court, right? The town of $5,360 got $1,660. $3,000 to the schools, $648 to the county, $1,660 to the town. Of that $1,660, $1,274 went to fund the general operating budget, which is usually number 8. That's everything in it. There is a handout in your lap that describes what is contained in that budget. It's in my block printing. $385 of the $1,660 went to the warrant article, which was $215,000 into capital reserve, the collected accounts where we're saving money for future purchases. That was $172 of the $5,360. Another warrant article that passed was $130,000 worth of paving, which is $104 of that $5,360. And we spent $135,000 almost on the Hill Road Bridge to open Hill Road again, and that represents $108 of this $5,360. Of the general operating budget, there's that list. Some of the highlights are to town government, which is that list of my block printing on the page. The sort of omnibus, sort of everything, employee benefits and personnel and the insurances. $565. To safety services, fire, ambulance, visiting nurses, welfare, that sort of thing. $276 of the $5,360. The transfer station, $104 of the $5,360. And the highway department, $328 of this $5,360. And that's where what we paid in our taxes in 2013, that's where it went. So I'll stop. So I suppose it would be fair to take a question about any of that. Yeah.
Yeah, with your transfer station, I know in the past you've made a lot of money out of the transfer station.
That's true.
And that money that's going now back into it, is that coming out of its proceeds, or is that coming out of the town?
That shows up as revenue, which we're not quite talking about tonight. Tonight we're talking about the taxation which got everybody here. There is a revenue side to all of this equating that we're not talking about. The town's revenues are generally $780,000 to $900,000 a year. That's dog licenses and car registrations and revenue sharing from the state and so on and so forth. That is part of all this. But after all that has been applied, what is left is what we have to raise by taxation, and that is what's on the form. Yeah.
Can you explain what's been left over at the end of the year that applying to the tax rate in previous years and how that affects this tax rate?
Well, I touched on that, but
Well, not really.
well, all right. So what we used to call surplus is now called fund balance. Every year we get a warrant passed with an amount of money in it, and then it's the selectmen's job to spend that money the way that voters have intended it to be spent. Usually at the end of the year, because we're forecasting what we're going to need to spend before we actually spend it, we usually have a surplus. We have money left over. We thought we wouldn't this year because of the flood repair we did in July, but it turned out we did have a small surplus. The auditors will be here on the 27th to sort out what that number is. We don't know. We know we did not go over budget in the lines that you have in your hands. There is some money left over. Sometimes it is a couple $100,000. And that is figured out by the Department of Revenue Administration, who tells us what that surplus number is. We must maintain in the town's books they asked for 8% of the total warrant to be set aside for emergencies. And the way you get at emergency money for surplus set aside like that is to have get DRA's, the Department of Revenue Administration's permission to have a special town meeting. We haven't done that in this town in, I don't know when we've ever done it. 2 years ago, over here, 2012, the selectmen made the decision after we had the communication from the Department of Revenue Administration about how much surplus we had. We voted to take $168,000 of that surplus and apply it directly to the as yet not firm tax rate that is set by DRA. That's why they communicate with us. So, you know, what do you want to do with this available surplus? So we opted, instead of, some years we will construct a warrant and we'll say to buy a $150,000 truck and we'll take $75,000 out of surplus. You've seen that if you've been voting. You've seen that once in a while. We didn't do that last year. But in 2012, the selectmen made the decision to knock $1 off the tax rate just by our labor. And that helped that, but it didn't help the next year because we didn't have it surplus anymore. We used it. And we didn't have it last year, in 2013, to apply surplus to the warrant.
I believe it was 2 years that you did that.
Maybe. Yeah, Mike.
I'm Michael Rockets from East Alstead. Your $1,629,128, that includes for this year, as proposed, the 8% overlay of the DRA demands?
Yes.
Okay.
Although we usually force it down to 5%, because we think that's enough, and this year it was just barely enough, and that's primarily because of the flooding in late June and early July. I'll just take a short sideways tour. This is a good example of where surplus money comes from. We, as a town, raised and appropriated $135,000 for that bridge job. It cost $114 or a few dollars less. Time we got all done. So all the rest of that money fell right back into the general fund. It would have been surplus at the end of the year for us to spend. Turns out we have the authority to do that, but we have never chosen to exercise it or to use to reduce the tax rate. And we're really glad we didn't do either of those things. Mr. Cartwright.
Yes, could you explain what happened to the state portion of the tax rate?
I cannot.
We've only got three, there's four areas.
Oh, I combined them, I added them together to make the school, because it goes to the school.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying for simplicity here to the extent that it's possible. I also cut the cents off the dollars over here, so if you add this, this, and this, you're $1 short of this. But I'm not calling that serious.
Taking a lunch sometime? That sounds good.
Yeah.
The state portion of that tax rate generally runs around $5.50, $5.50. Does that sound right for you
No,
legislators back there?
I actually have that information right here. The state is, the state portion is $2.15.
So that's how adequacy aid is funded? And it moves all around. Am I right, Ann?
My husband's even better at that. He had said 215 before you said it.
Look, come on up.
Yeah, anything else? At this point? If we're talking up here, feel free to break in with a question at any time. Michael?
See, we get to the budget. Start talking about this year's budget.
No, thanks for all these. Great.
Start with the budget. Everybody got one? Every year, we pretty much do it the same way. Start at the top, go line by line. If at any point you have a question about any line, throw up your hand and we'll answer the question to the best of our ability. Just so that you know, this is a process that started this year, probably about the last week or so of September. We started having the department heads come in with round one, and then they came in with a later round. So we've been working on this now for almost 4 months, 3.5, pretty solidly. So we should have all the answers, let's hope. Start at the top. Executive, administrative assistant wages. For anybody who's ever talked to Linda, that's her. Clerical. Tell you what, let's do it this way. Why don't you everybody just for 30 seconds, 40 minutes, look down through and see if there's anything that you got a question on as far as just executive. Okay? If there's any questions you got regarding that.
I got a question. I heard these also. Under the executive, in 2013, the executive was 65,943. It went up this year, or proposed up to 70,555. I think that's the bottom line that everybody's interested in, all the way down through. You know, you got it all listed separate here, but it went up $5,000 is under that. All these articles on this page here has gone up, except for, I think it was 14 and 16 people.
Yeah, and the reasons why are in the lines. For instance, under trustee of trust fund fees, there's now $4,000. Because last year, the trustee of trust fund, Bruce Bellows, decided that we could make a lot more money in the town with the money that is held in trust for our benefit if the trusts were handled not by him, Bruce Bellows of Alstead, New Hampshire, but by a trust investment management company. And the income went up. They, as you know, who have investments, charge a fee for their services. And we have judged that based on what they told us to be about $4,000 in 2014. So that's $4,000 of the increase, which is about $4,000.
And he says give Linda a small raise as well.
I got another question, and if you don't mind, keep the camera off me, please.
Public space, but
Thanks.
maybe on camera.
Ben Alstead from Alstead.
Thank you.
So, in executive here, we also have, executive telephones, so it's proposed at 1,300 again.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna, the executive telephones, I guess I don't understand the whole telephone bill, truthfully, because I think it says tax collector is about 300, tax clerk is about 300 line items, but, executive actually has 1,300.
While he's searching for paperwork, I'll say thanks in part to Rich Malavenko's research, we have switched phone companies a couple of times in recent years and saved money every time.
Thank you, Rich.
But not much. But it's a big enough number not to ignore. And he's now proposing that we do the same thing with electricity.
Yes, I was there to meet. It just seems like a big number when the town clerk is at 300, the tax collector is at 300.
She has one phone, we have two.
In fact.
Not bad.
Well, this first one here is the library. This is the East Alstead Fire Department. This one is Town of Alstead. This one is Town of Alstead. Usually the thick pack is
That's
here.
it,
Oh, it's thick.
and it's in the front.
Good, there are three of them.
No, but you can get it right off.
Well, there are what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 phones entering that bill.
And they all go to different.
The selectmen don't have a phone, by the way. Just in case you're wondering, we don't get phones.
Explain the software support issue.
I'm sorry?
I see you appropriate a $9,750 amount or request for software support. And it seems that the IT people seem to bounce that up a good 10 grand every time you hire them. So can you explain why?
I'll let Linda do that.
Actually, after the auditors come, there's going to be half of that will go into next year. We pay for our software services before the first, ahead of time. So until they get here and take what I paid in December and put it forward to 2014, it will look funny.
We can't move it ahead, only they can do that. We paid it ahead, but it's actually against next year.
So it'll actually come out in the
Yeah,
wash.
yeah, that's what happens, it goes forward. What the person's coming on Thursday to do is to close out the books for the year. They take all the bills that were incurred in December, and paid in January, and they put them back in December. Everything that I paid in December for next year will be put into this year.
Hope that helps. No, I'm still stuck on the telephone. You're telling me there's 7 different lines in the office in there, but we still pay.
No, not in the office, in the fire departments, in the town barn, in the office, in the library, in the.
But there's other line items for all those departments here in telephone.
Yeah,
That's not a cell phone thing.
no, we don't have any cell phones. Actually, what happened, we used to be on a plan where we had to pay for our long distance call. Just at the end of last year, I was able to get $22.99 for any line being able to call anywhere. So that may go down this year some. But in the beginning, we also had to pay the first month. It was part of 1 month than that.
So where's the $600 go to the tax collector in town clerk?
She has one phone. I
There's
have
8
two.
phones.
Huh?
So there's 8 phones?
But there's 3 in the police department, there's 2, 1 in each fire department. There's a fax line in the police department. And there's 1 at the transfer station. No, there's hard line too. In their budget. Each one has their budget. Probably this is higher, mine is, because of the number of calls, out of state calls I would make. Previously. Now I'm not really sure.
Are we getting like, so help me, are we getting one phone bill and then you break it down
Yep.
for the budget purposes? So we get one bill for all the, are these still landlines?
Yeah.
And who's providing them?
I went back to Fairpoint because, as I said, I got $22.99 per line.
Yeah, I
was
still
cheaper.
think you may wanna look at that again because Fairpoint's not the best guy in the block.
I agree with that. But not only that, so if there's 1,300 in the line item there, and there's, say there's, I'm not looking at the thing, if there's 13 in the fire department, 13 in the highway department, I'll find out. They're not got money. Telephone. Especially when you're saying, you know,
Phone bill's actually making its way around for those like we're gonna.
right, okay, I've seen that, but I haven't, that doesn't add up in my head to the line item, so.
That's a month.
So, Linda, when did we change what we're doing?
Changed the end of the year. And actually what happened is, they had to go back and refigure because they mischarged us on the police phone. And I had called them. That's why you'll see that one says negative for.
So these plans now include like unlimited long distance, unlimited.
Yeah.
So why is the total still 1,300? So for example, just on the executive one, why isn't that lower? On the 2014 request.
Well, we'll look into this and have more at the deliberative session, but the obvious reason why it's not less is because we spent $1,229.
No, it's just changed over. Anyhow, I would suggest that,
Yeah, we'll look at
for
it.
the deliberative session, you have another look at the whole phone situation.
Yes. Anything else about executive? So next would be town clerk.
I have a question here, Matt.
Yeah.
It's a common theme all the way through here, so we might as well, address it, and that's on the on the software and the software support. Almost every line in, where it's broken down in department shows a fairly significant increase. Now, are we buying, like, do we have a contract or something? Is that what this is? Or is this a pay as you need it? Or maybe you could explain what we're paying for in terms of software services.
Well, I am not the IT selector. I'll let it up to Linda and Joel if you want to. Linda knows most of it.
We have two different systems, an assessing system, actually we have three. I have accounting software, and Gloria has tax software, town clerk software, and assessing software. Every year we pay for a maintenance fee that we can call them anytime and they will help us do stuff. And in order to keep with these companies, you have to pay the fees. It hasn't gone up, this is the same idea, after the day come, the fee, this will be almost in half.
So these are proprietary systems and we're basically paying for license and support. Plus, we spend $300 a month for Ernest Young Man from Massachusetts. He does, I think, a pretty terrific and responsive job of fixing whatever's broken.
Are other towns using the same software?
Yeah, and it's easy to look at this and conclude it's some kind of a racket. Because there are only an approved list of vendors to manage assessing software in the state. I can't help with that, but maybe the legislature can.
Well, I'm just wondering whether you can't, cooperate with some towns that pull the contract with these guys to get some kind of a better deal on, if you're using common software, then maybe you can do something, as I said, it looks like on every line in here, there's some kind of software support, treasurer, with several line items in here that deal with software support. And maybe that's something that, we can look at in terms of different approaches to get some of that cost going out of the exercise.
I would love that, and I will pledge to you that I'll bring it up in our annual meeting with our neighborhood select committee. We have that meeting every year right after March, generally to talk about what we can share in the year going forward. It's a great idea. I wish it were all open source, but I don't think that day will come in.
But even if it's proprietary, there's gotta be a lot of municipalities using the same stuff. Some of this comes through the state or is approved by the state.
No, this is all private enterprise, but approved by the DRA in the case of the assessment software.
And a lot of the stuff you're paying by the seat, it's kind of set up, you can't just do that. It's like AutoCAD and a lot of other things, you can't just borrow somebody else's software.
No, I'm not talking about borrowing it, I'm talking about, in business, for example, you've got a license that covers so many users on it.
Right, I'm talking about seats, same thing.
Yeah, let's maybe not talk about all the different ways it would work, Rich. I like what you're saying, I think it'd be pretty cool if somebody like the LGC negotiated a contract for all of the towns that they represented. That would be bound to provide us with some. So I'll follow it up and get back. Century.
Who was Landry Falcon Road? I just was wondering how the dog licenses are costing us money.
Gloria here?
Because we have to actually buy the tags.
Okay, well, there's $6 a piece if the dog's neutered, I believe 10 if it's not. It takes 5 minutes to do, so how's the tag costing more than the fee?
We pay for the
Yeah,
tag,
Gloria.
and we charge for it, and that's what we charge and get paid for, and it shows up on the revenue side, which is not on the postage.
I still don't get how many dogs are registered in town?
Yeah.
Because I can't see that there's $1,200 worth of metal tags.
You also pay a fee to the department, I think you, Gloria, don't you pay a fee to the state?
Yes. We don't get all that money, it goes to the state.
How much is that?
The state gives, and the $2 ones, they get $1. And $6.50 ones, they get $2.